What's up, everybody? This is Jer Baron coming at you with part 2 of the Super Dino Stats series. This will probably be the last part until or unless Wildcard implements new stat mechanics that change things. Before we begin, I'd like to thank you for watching and remind you to hit that sub button and hit the like button and come by in the evenings Eastern Standard Time because we live stream most days of the week. This is actually primarily the channels for streams. Today, we'll be taking a look at how mutations work in ARK, but with a specific focus on continuing our discussion from the first part of the series. My assumption is that you've either seen that video or you know already the basics about how dino stats work in ARK. If not, the link to that video is in the description and you will need to know the basics. You really do need to know the basics to get the most out of this video. So let's get started. The aim of this video, just like the last one, is how to breed a super dino. I'll touch on color mutations, but those are more or less a matter of preference and are pretty random, so this video is going to focus on stat mutating. In the last video, I tasked you all with breeding not one, but two, or at least two, super dinos with identical stats, one male and one female. The first reason was that so you could breed infinite super dinos with your master mom and pop. You'll see the second reason later in the video. So, I started out with this really incredibly stupidly complicated system where I was testing all these dinosaurs. I think there are over 75 raptors here, and some of them are tamed and some of them are bred, and I was trying to figure out how it all works. And at the end of the day, I realized that this entire video can be carried out primarily in reference to just these 4 raptors. I can demonstrate the method with only these 4 raptors, each of which is represented by a principal figure in the Oedipal family structure. So you have King Laius and Jocasta, who are the parents, Oedipus is their son, and Antigone is Oedipus's daughter and half-sister. Jocasta and Laius have been bred to have identical stats. One male, Laius, and one female. They're identical, you can see. That, right, like that. The stats are exactly the same. You'll also notice that this is not exactly a super dino. That wasn't really my intention. It doesn't need to be for me to show you how this works. So another important thing about these two is that they don't have any mutations on them. So they are indicated in their names by F00, whoop, lag, and M00. Female, 0 matrilineal mutations, and here's the button, by the way, to check that. 0 matrilineal mutations, 0 patrilineal mutations. So neither of these have seen any mutations whatsoever, and you can always check this. This never changes on any given dinosaur. Okay. I personally think that this is the best way to start. I think personally the best way to start is to breed like we talked about in the last video and then move on to mutations, so that if at all possible, what you start with after you have your 2 master breed super dinos is a total blank slate on the mutation front. Some people might disagree with me about that, but I personally feel like starting with a blank slate allows you to be much more systematic and efficient in the long run. So, the first thing you need to do is decide in advance what you want mutated. This can be any combination of stats, or it can focus on a single stat. It'll take a lot more time and effort to focus on a single stat, but it's doable. So, just as an example, let's say you said, well, I want this to be a little bit better on HP, and I do need a little bit more stamina, but I primarily want to focus on melee damage. Well, you kind of have to decide that in advance. Or let's say you just go, I want total glass cannon, or I want total tank, right? So melee in the first and health in the second. This whole process takes enough time investment that you really do want to decide in advance for any given set of breeders what you want. It saves you a lot of time and a lot of effort. Okay, so let's say, hypothetically, that what we wanted to do was turn Jocasta and Laius, turn this bloodline into a total and complete glass cannon. So what we'll do is we'll go for as high a melee stat as possible and not worry and not even desire these other stats. How would we go about doing that? Well, that's kind of the point of the video. how does one cultivate through breeding a set of mutations that is desirable to the purposes of the breeder? Well, to do that, you first need to know three things. First, mutations are only positive. This may change later on, but as of right now, in ARK, stat mutations only make your dino better, not worse. Never worse. Okay, so melee can only get a boost, it can't get a nerf. Second, each time you achieve a stat mutation, it improves a particular stat by 2 levels and not 1. But it only counts as 1 mutation on the family tree. Okay? So, for instance, Oedipus here got a single mutation on the patrilineal side, 0 on the matrilineal side, but he got a 2-point boost in melee damage. And just like in the last video, since we know that dino stats are not arbitrary, we know it's a 2-point boost because it went from a 237 to a 239. And you can also you can also look up how they scale that it was a 2-point boost. So the child gets named M01, a male with 1 patrilineal mutation in melee, which is now 314%. It's at this point exactly that I think that most people who end up going wrong, go wrong. And I'll show you what ends up happening. Okay, so you breed Jocasta and Laius, and you get Oedipus. Then, because Oedipus is a male, you end up breeding him with Jocasta. Those of you who know anything about Greek mythology may have picked up on why I named these the way that I did. If not, Google is your friend. But in any case, you got to get real Freudian and breed Oedipus with Jocasta. So you breed in the melee mutation, which is great. And then you breed in another one. And that's where we get Antigone. She's got a single extra point in melee. This one was 314. This one's 325.8. But what if, instead of that, we ended up with this pretty looking female. Female 1-1. Got a nice little blue stat, or a color mutation, which by the way did not end up carrying through the bloodline, interestingly enough. But let's say you end up with that. So then you breed this one and Oedipus, and you end up with a 2-1. Male and female. Then you breed the 2 1s together, and you get a male 3-4 and a female 3-4. Then you breed them together, and you end up with a male 7-8, which then you breed with the male with the female 3-4, and you get a female 7-15. And in case that was all too quick for you, basically where we've ended up was that you have 7 mutations on the counter. Okay, important distinction. On the counter, we have 7 mutations on the matrilineal side and 15 mutations on the patrilineal side. Except for look at the stats. We have a 2-point boost in oxygen and a 4-point boost in melee. 243, 237. That's 6 levels, 6 points. 2, 4. 2 plus 4 is 6. So what happened? Why did we waste 22? 7 plus 15. Why did we waste 22 mutation slots to get only 6 extra levels? Well, the reason is the third thing that you need to know right off the bat before you ever breed. The babies for each of these, remember how many how many mutation, how much was on the mutation counter of their parents, even if they don't pick up the mutated stat. So what ended up happening is this female 1-1, even though it was a product of Oedipus and Jocasta, didn't pick up the melee boost that Oedipus had. Nevertheless, it remembered, and so it ends up being a 1-1. And you keep compounding that down the line. That's why you can see it's multiplicative. It's not 1 and then 2 and then 3 and then 4 and then 5. It's 1, 2, 4, 8, 15, etc. It's not exactly multiplicative, but you see my point. It's compounding the error all the way through the bloodline, so that what you end up with is a dino that has used up all its mutations and is really not that much better for your efforts. That's not something you want. Okay, that's why this is the point right here at Oedipus. This is the point where people go wrong. So what do you do instead? Well, Oedipus and Jocasta, obviously for historical reasons, have to still end up producing Antigone. But then, instead of mating Antigone with Oedipus, you breed Antigone with Laius. Why is that? Because Jocasta and Laius act as a throttle on the mutation counter because they're 0-0. They have nothing to contribute to the mutation counter, period, ever. They're not mutated at all. So Jocasta, Oedipus, produces Antigone, who is a 1-1 and has gotten both of those mutations into actual stat benefit. The idea then is you breed Laius with Antigone and you end up with either a 2-1 or a 1-2 and 6 points into melee. Then let's say that was a male, you breed that male back here with Jocasta again, and you end up with like a 2-2 or a 3-1 or some combination of that, and 4 additional mutation points into melee, and all the way down the line. So you basically rinse and repeat. And I have this really super highly professional graphic that I've produced that kind of demonstrates what that family tree would look like. Up here you've got Jocasta, the M00 and F00. They're basically interchangeable, so they're here and here, and then each generation, right, M01 is Oedipus, F11 is Antigone. Then hypothetically you could have like an F21, M31, M32, etc., all the way down the line until you reach your 40 mutations, which has actually translated into 40 stat boosts of benefit. And that's why, hypothetically, again, whether anybody actually ends up achieving this, I mean, I would be impressed, but hypothetically, you could work it so that all 40 of the mutation points, which by the way equals 80 levels, go straight into melee damage. You would end up with a level 317 Raptor with a base melee of 774.2%. A base melee, which means then you get to go level it up and give it more melee after that. That's absolutely insane. It's also an extraordinary amount of work. Okay? So, now you know we're talking about an enormous time investment here. There's a 2.5% chance of a mutation each time you breed. That mutation can happen to one of the 6 stats, right? So, I mean, just because you happen to get one doesn't mean it necessarily will go to melee. That's part of the reason I only ended up demonstrating this with 4 Raptors, because it was taking an enormous amount of time for me to even get to Antigone, even with admin, like changing the speed of time and the rate of hatch and all that stuff. Okay, so every 40 eggs you get a mutation, and that mutation might be worthless to you. Because of that, usually, unless you're the most persistent person in the world, you probably really won't truly benefit from pushing only one stat. Maybe it's okay to just concede that a boost in health or a boost in stamina as well wouldn't be the end of the world. So, just to close out, a couple of things I don't know. First, whether color mutations and stat mutations are mutually exclusive in the coding. In other words, could you get both at the same time? People have reported that you cannot get both at the same time, but I don't know if that decreases your chance of getting a stat mutation when you get a color mutation or what. So my hunch is that they are separate because they're separate in regular breeding, but I don't know that. Second, I don't know what happens when you get to 20 on one side and you're not at 20 on the other side. So mutations matrilineal and patrilineal. My hunch here is that mutations don't automatically just happen to the side that's not full yet. I suspect your overall mutation chance decreases at that point, but I really am not sure about that. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it was helpful. I hope you found it informative. Let me know if you have any other methods or suggestions in the comments, because there really isn't a huge amount of information about this, so we're all sort of figuring it out. Leave a like and subscribe, and come by a stream sometime to say hello. We stream in the evenings, like I said, Eastern Standard Time. Turning on notifications will let you know when we go live. Thanks again, and I'll see you on the next one.